So, I've seen a lot of people have debates and arguments with vegans on the internet, and I think it's pretty interesting. Well, I think there's a couple of things that are pretty interesting. One, the amount of bad arguments both sides usually have, and the lack of ability for one side to deal with the bad arguments due to a lack of thought or a lack of ever being presented this. So I'm making this video to help a couple of people out when it comes to arguments with vegans and be an individual who really thinks that a lot of vegans actually don't have very good ethical arguments, against people who eat meat. Especially because a lot of vegans love to well, I wouldn't say a lot, but I have noticed that there's some two-stepping between some of the leftist-leaning vegans, which I'll get into later. It's a bit off topic, but like I said, I'll get into it later. So I think one thing, let's start off by saying this. One thing I want to talk about first is the fact that I've seen a lot of anti-feminists or skeptic community people argue against vegans, but more specifically argue against the behavior of vegans. And I just want to say this. I think that's a complete waste of time. Like, I know there was recently a debate between Romy Millennial and Vegan Gains about the way vegans treat each other, which really kind of more devolved into, why meat isn't a healthy thing to eat, which really just kind of devolved into Vegan Gains not even letting Romy talk. But I find a conversation like that about the behavior of vegans to be a little bit of a waste of time. And the reason why is because, one, if you're only arguing against vegan, or if your only problem with vegans is the fact that they aren't nice people, then that means you've pretty much already forfeited the greater point of veganism, which is that it's a healthier option. Now, I see this happen a lot in these debates between vegans and anti-feminists. They constantly say, no, I think being a vegan is totally healthy and people can do it. Well, that's the case. Done. What are we even talking about? If there's no argument to be had, what the fuck are you arguing about? Is my question. If you concede that it's healthier and you want to be healthy, well then do it. So that means that's why the conversation between vegans and anti-feminists always devolves into an ethical argument. And the problems that I find here is that a lot of people continuously try to use the same tactics against vegans that they use against social justice warriors, and it's just not going to work. And the reason why is because, let's be clear here about this. A lot of vegans don't care about their mean or rude behavior on the internet. And the reason why is because in their minds, they think that they're right. They think they have a righteous aim. They think it's right for them to be upset about the suffering and death of millions of animals. So to them, they don't give a shit that they say mean, nasty things on the internet, because it pales in comparison to the fact that a cow is getting killed or getting slaughtered. These pigs are getting slaughtered. So to argue with these people about an aspect of their community or an aspect of themselves they don't even care about is a waste of time. You can't convince someone to do something differently if you already start with the notion that they don't care. You can't convince a vegan to start trying to be nice or change the way they spread their message, especially if it's successful and it works. Like, you can't tell Vegan Gains that his channel isn't successful. You can't tell Vegan Gains he isn't getting attention, he isn't getting people to follow him, that he isn't getting people to support him, because he is. Despite the fact that he's a colossal asshole on the internet, it is successful. It works. Being a dick on the internet is very successful format when you want to get attention. And so to sit here and say that some vegans are really mean or crude, like this is a waste of time to argue with them. They don't care. They don't give a damn. I mean, what's the old saying? Men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. Well, again, look at Vegan Gains' channel. Numbers don't lie. And then the other worst part about the fact that you argue with vegans about their behavior is the fact that there are plenty of really kind-hearted vegans on the internet that will just talk to you like a regular, normal person. So yeah, some vegans are crazy. Some vegans act cultish and act, like terrible people. But a lot of vegans are really kind and nice, and you can find them, you can talk to them. So you can't even use the fact that Vegan Gains is shitty. I mean, because Vegan Gains is actually is the only shitty vegan that I've seen on the internet, well, that has any prominence. Most of the other shitty vegans I find in the comment section, but most of the other vegan YouTubers, they're pretty nice people. A lot of vegans are pretty nice people. So you can't use the minority or with the figurehead Vegan Gains to say vegans are shitty people. It's just, it doesn't work, and they don't care. So it really doesn't work. So now that all that being said, I find that element of arguing with vegans on the internet to just be null and void. There's no reason to even have it. That said, there are a lot of ethical issues and arguments that happen between anti-feminists and vegans, or just regular people on the internet, that I think a lot of anti-feminists lose, not because vegan arguments are actually really good, but mostly because a lot of them treat vegans as if they're social justice warriors and feminists. And what they have to understand is, well, they're not. I mean, yeah, you can have a vegan that acts like it, you can have a vegan that is, you know, a feminist, but I mean, at their core, a vegan is not the same caliber as some little girl on the internet that doesn't know what she's talking about. Like, these vegans, they know what they're talking about. Like, a lot of people, I've seen this happen a lot. Like, a lot of people try to argue in debate, even with vegan Gaines, as if he's a stupid person. And a lot of people need to come to terms with the fact that Richard is not a stupid person. Vegan Gaines is not an idiot. He may say, like, totally exaggerated, silly shit sometimes, but overall, he's not dumb. And people need to stop treating him and other vegans as if these people do not know what the fuck they're talking about. Because they do. You're not going to argue with these people, especially about nutrition, and especially about nutrition with these people who spend almost every waking moment, you know, when they're not working, thinking about what they're going to eat. You're not going to beat this person. They just have way more experience than you have. So you can't argue with them on that front. There's no point in arguing with a vegan on that front, because you're not going to win. And I haven't seen very many people who even debate these vegans. In fact, I consistently see people conceding when they argue with vegans that yes, being vegan is healthier. I'm not going to argue with you about that. Then the fuck are we arguing about? Okay, I know what we're arguing about. We're arguing about the ethics of animal slaughter. We're arguing about whether or not it's okay to eat meat, or why it's fine for humans to consume meat, right? And the thing that I find interesting is I think a lot of people just have really bad arguments. I know it sounds a little cocky for me to say this, but I really do think that vegans don't really have the best arguments. I just think a lot of people are just unprepared because they never heard the arguments before. But when you actually take a step back and listen and think about it, I don't really think they're all that good, and I'm going to spend the rest of this video talking about that. But before I spend the rest of this video talking about that, I want to summarize with this. I keep seeing anti-feminists try to argue with vegans like they're feminists and like they're social justice warriors. They are not. They are people who know what they're talking about. They might be wrong, or you may not agree with them, but you have to understand, you're not going to beat them by pointing out the fact that they have shitty behavior. You're not going to convince them by pointing out the fact that they have shitty, terrible behavior. They don't care. They think that they have a reason to be angry. They think they have a righteous anger. You're not going to mock these people out of here. You know, these people are, some of these people, even then, are still reasonable and are nice anyway. So it's not a really good battle tactic. I mean, I think you have to face different enemies differently. And if you already can see that being vegan is a healthier option, then I don't really see what else is left to argue about. Okay, that's not true. I do see, but I mean, if you think it's healthier, then why not go vegan at least for a little while, right? At least try it. I mean, if you think that it's healthier. So after I spent all of that time explaining why I think anti-feminist arguments against vegans are bad, now I can spend the rest of the time talking about why I think arguments for veganism is also, well, not good at the very least. I will say that the way a lot of vegans structure their arguments are brilliant. And you'll see why I think they're brilliant in a second. But I still don't think that they're really good when you actually put some critical thought into it. So without further ado, then let's begin. I believe the first thing that I should do is see if I have an understanding of the vegan ethical arguments before I deconstruct them, right? Now, this is what I believe, and I could be completely wrong here, but this is what I believe to be one of the core tenets of the vegan arguments. And that is, because killing an animal causes needless suffering and death for its consumption, it's wrong to eat them because you have an alternative source of nutrition, which would be plants and other various forms of vegetation. If I'm wrong in that summary, by all means correct me, but I hear consistently a lot of the times that is the issue, that killing an animal, one, causes its suffering and its death, and two, that it is needless. Now, the first thing that I want to start off by saying is, there's a part of this argument that I can't really understand how it applies to morality or any ethical problem. And that is the fact that it's needless. I don't understand how something being needless factors into whether or not it's wrong or right. If morality or ethics is about what we should do and what we ought to do, then that would mean that the core problem of killing these animals isn't so much that it's needless, but because you're causing its suffering and death. And even then, I still don't find how having an alternative source of anything makes the previous source bad. The thing that would make the alternative better is the fact that the alternative is not causing something that the first choice is doing. So in other words, the core issue of the vegan argument isn't so much that it's needless and you have an alternative, but that you're causing the suffering and death of animals. And if that's the case, then that should be the only thing that's argued for. I just don't really see where the relevance in something being needless or something being needed is necessary. I think the reason why the point of it being needless is so focused on is because a lot of vegans will give way to that. If you were starving in some area, then that would be the gray area in which you could, I don't know, kill a bobcat or something and eat that. However, even still, I would argue that the need is not really so much relevant into whether or not something is wrong or right, because that would mean that if you're being morally consistent, it would be wrong to eat an animal within any circumstance, needless or not. And if the need is what is important, then that would mean that the problem isn't so much that you're causing suffering and death, the problem is that there's an alternative. And like I said, even when you factor in both issues, the only reason the alternative would be preferred is because there's some difference between that and the prior choice. And in this case, it would be the fact that it's needless, but I just don't see the moral relevance in it. I just don't understand it. But I'm sure some vegan could explain it, but from what I've seen in that argument, it just kind of seems more like a throwaway term, if anything. So then that kind of only leaves the second problem when it comes to the vegan argument that I hear primarily most of the time, and that is the suffering and death of animals. Well, to be honest, personally, the only thing I can really co-sign vegans with when it comes to this is the suffering aspect of animals. And I know a lot of vegans don't accept the fact that some meat eaters, even though most people aren't solely carnivorous, but they call them meat eaters for whatever reason, and I guess as some kind of pejorative or insult, but it's really strange, and I'm digressing, but a lot of vegans don't like the fact that some meat eaters will say that if we could somehow reinvent the factory farming issues and somehow make it so that these animals aren't suffering, these animals live a relatively peaceful life, and then we kill them and eat them, then it will be fine. Vegans don't really accept that. But personally, I am kind of the mindset that no animal really needs to be like tortured or really needs to suffer all that much if it's going to die anyway. I guess it's entirely possible to see the alternative, that if the animal is going to die anyway, then what real difference does it make? But I mean, you can make that argument if you're a real nihilist, so you can make that argument about the human condition as well, but that goes well beyond the scope of this video. However, when it all comes down to it, I personally can see the problem with causing an animal to suffer when there's no real need for it, only because I can empathize so much to where causing the suffering of humans would be terrible as well. However, the one thing that I can't really co-sign with vegans on is causing the death of animals, mostly because death is a factor that would exist independent of whether we humans want it or not, and animals kill each other all of the time, and humans are animals. So in all honesty, if you accept the fact that animals will kill other animals, and you accept that humans are indeed animals, then it would be fine just by that nature of logic for humans to kill other animals, because we are animals. In fact, saying humans and animals in a separate category would, one, have to imply that there is some kind of difference between humans and animals. Now, obviously, there is some kind of difference, considering the fact that I'm recording this on camera and talking to millions or thousands of people potentially. However, if humans are animals, then it is the equivalent of talking about a Honda as if it's different from cars, when in all actuality a Honda is a car. So humans are animals. And a lot of people I notice like to two-step this about the human condition, where on one hand they'll invoke the fact that humans have different specific instincts and it's fine when they do one thing, in particular have a bunch of sex with random people, that's totally fine. But then they'll two-step and say, well, because we have these big brains that we can rationalize, we should extend this moral agency to other creatures, i.e. animals. I don't really like the two-stepping. However, to be completely honest, if humans are animals, then you're going to have to accept the fact that if you think it's fine for animals to kill other animals, then you would logically have to extend that to humans, because that's what we are. Unless you want to say that we exist in some area that transcends other animals because we're humans and because we can rationalize things, I still find that to be a little silly, and I will explain exactly why. Well, right now, actually. This is the second argument for veganism that I see consistently spouted by vegans in comment sections, and in particular by Ask Yourself. Ask Yourself is a vegan YouTuber on the internet that I've actually had a bit of a conversation with. I mean, we really only went back and forth a little bit in the comment section, but I've watched a lot of his videos, and this is an argument that he makes consistently. He made this argument in the debate with Romy Millennial I also believe he said the same thing with Andy Worski as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let him put his argument out there in its entirety multiple times. So we all know that he is consistent and he feels this way. I am not trying to strawman him, and I'm not trying to make it seem like he's out of context here. I really don't want to make it seem like that. But I don't want to misquote or misrepresent his argument when I can just show you what he has been saying consistently over, as it seems, about a year. I went back and watched his videos from a year ago, and he's saying the same thing. So I'm just going to let him go.
Do you think it's okay to stab a pig to death? That's where I'm at. Do you guys think that's all right?
If you're doing it for meat, I have no problem with the pig being killed. If you're doing it for fun, no.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
Let's say you have other sources easily accessible, though. It's not a survival situation.
I still don't see an issue with it.
Neither do I. It's not about survival.
But you do see a problem with murdering a human for food, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So here's why that's not logically consistent. Unless you can actually spell out a difference between humans and animals, which, if present in humans instead of animals, would make it okay to do this for humans, then you're proposing two different standards for two different creatures, and you're not actually differentiating them in a way that would make the standard apply to either if present in either. So that is a double standard. That is the
Sorry, could you repeat that? Could you repeat that one more time?
Absolutely. If you're going to say that it's okay, look, if you're going to say that it's okay to murder one creature, but it's not okay to do it to another, you're saying humans, you shouldn't kill a human for food, it's fine to kill an animal for food. Then if you don't want that to be a double standard, you need to differentiate those two systems. You need to point out what it is about animals, which, if true of humans, would make it okay to murder them needlessly for food. So is it that they're less intelligent? Well, if humans were less intelligent, would it be okay to kill them needlessly for food? I don't think so. Is it that they don't have a future concept? Well, assuming that's even true, if humans didn't have a future concept, would it be okay to murder them needlessly for food? So unless you can actually ethically differentiate humans and animals in a way that would make the treatment justified for either, if either of them possess the difference, then you're proposing a double standard.
All the vegan argument requires is logical consistency and a personal belief in human moral value. Veganism will follow logically from that position because you cannot differentiate animals from humans in a way that, if true of humans, would justify depriving us of our basic rights. The objectivity or subjectivity of morality is irrelevant unless you deny the importance of logical consistency, by which logic you can't take any moral position on anything, then veganism will follow. If you want to be treated morally, then what is the distinction between you and this fucking animal, which, if true of you, would justify treating you like this?
So now that we've listened to the argument several times, I think I'm just going to jump right in and say that I think the argument that Ask Yourself is making is foolish for one very important reason. And that is, simply put, no organism would ever argue for its self-destruction. In fact, every organism is trying to survive and reproduce. If you accept evolution to be a fact of life, if you accept that that's how every organism came to be, then you have no choice but to accept that our prime directive as living beings is to survive and reproduce. So in other words, it makes no sense that any human would ever argue that it is indeed fine to kill them if some condition was present in them that's present in animals. It just doesn't make any sense. And in fact, every carnivore that exists in any situation would always have to value themselves more than they value their prey. Otherwise, they wouldn't kill them or they wouldn't eat them or anything like that. It's just natural for an organism to prioritize not only itself, but its own species in relation to other species in order to survive. That's our prime directive. So, instincts, though, I guess some vegans might summarize me to say, but on a serious notion, it just doesn't make any sense to ever ask anyone, find a situation which you will say it's okay to kill you or another human. Most people will never argue that point, which is why, to the layman, this actually sounds like a pretty good argument. This sounds reasonable. They're like, oh wait, this is a double standard. I would never say that it's okay to kill a human, so it must not be okay to kill a cow. But let's be real, if you were a cow, you would never argue that it's okay to eat you, in the same way a deer would never argue the case of the wolf. If a wolf eats a deer, the deer's not going to be all like, yeah, I'm really fine with getting eaten. Yeah. It's just not reasonable. No creature wants to be killed, So, I mean, saying that you should extend this type of empathy or moral agency to a creature would just kind of be par for the course. It's just kind of blatantly obvious, honestly, that no creature would want to let itself die. I will add this caveat here that humans are a very interesting and particular kind of creature, so far as that they will indeed commit suicide, but that kind of goes beyond the scope of this video, and humans are a very interesting creature in relation to evolution just in general that is really interesting, but again goes beyond the scope of the video. So yeah, some humans are very self-destructive and do indeed kill themselves, but for the most part, most animals aren't like that, and the vast majority of humans aren't like that either. Now, the second problem that I have with this argument that Ask Yourself and other vegans employ is the fact that it assumes that animals are moral agents. And I don't think animals are moral agents, for a couple of very important reasons. For starters, animals cannot even conceptualize the idea of morality. So, to try to add moral agency to a creature that cannot even understand the concept itself just seems really silly to me. If you're going to be completely honest, I don't even see how you could possibly extend that to animals. And considering the fact that animals have no obligation to humans, I still don't find it reasonable to extend an obligation humans have to animals in turn. That also includes trying to protect animals from going extinct. I find it to be noble and certainly courteous of humans to extend that to animals. However, do I find it as any obligations for humans unless they had some direct cause into the massive loss of life of animals? No, I don't. In other words, if I think that wildebeest were dying of natural causes, then you should let wildebeest go, and it will be sucked to see them extinct. But again, if you accept evolution as a true fact of life, 99% of all species that ever existed in life are gone anyway, which it's not actually even possible to know that, but a lot of people accept that as true. And if you accept that as true, then that would mean species going extinct would be totally fine. So again, I don't think humans have an obligation to animals. In the same way, I don't think animals have any obligation to humans. And it's clear to see that whenever a bear or a bobcat attacks a human and kills them, you don't ever put the bobcat or the bear to trial, because you understand they have no capacity for having any sort of moral obligation or responsibility to people. Now, of course, the vegan response to saying that animals don't have any moral agency or any understanding of morality would then be extended to babies or children. Some vegans would say, well, okay, babies cannot understand moral agency, so that would mean that it's fine to kill children. Well, there's actually one gigantic and very important difference between these animals that we're referring to that are wild and children, and that is they will eventually become moral agents, and the whole point of raising them is to create them to be moral agents that will have responsibility at some point. That is the whole of the difference between them. Withholding the fact that they're different species or the same species nonetheless, and also no one would kill their own children in most normal circumstances, because the ultimate goal of evolution is to continue to survive and reproduce, and most animals don't go against that prime directive deliberately. And I think one of the most important things to finally wrap this section of the video up is the fact that a lot of vegans have an issue with the fact that people separate dogs and other household animals. I only ever see people argue for dogs. Are different from the livestock animals such as pigs, cows, and chickens. And they don't really like the fact. They think it's hypocritical or a bit of a double standard that people are against the fact that you would kill or eat a dog versus the fact that you would kill and eat a chicken or anything. Well, first off, not every person feels that connection to dogs anyway. There are people who do indeed eat dogs, so you know, they are consistent. But the thing that's actually really important about this fact is the fact that dogs actually, and most service animals, or any other animal that'd be service, is different from livestock animals. You know, a lot of vegans say that this is a double standard, but it's actually not implying the correct, they're not implying the terminology correctly. The issue of a double standard is treating something that is the same or something that's similarly different based on arbitrary conditions. So if a black woman walks into a room or a white one walks in a room and you treat the white woman badly because she's white, even though she's doing the same exact thing the black woman is doing, it would be a double standard. You've created two different standards for the same exact thing. However, if you treat something differently, well, then I just said it. You're treating something differently. Dogs are different from livestock animals so far as where they cannot reciprocate moral responsibility and agency. Dogs, to some degree, reciprocate, for lack of a better word, responsibility to their owner. In other words, a dog will protect the owner, the dog will alert the owner dog, I don't know, in some capacity might even like the owner or love the owner. I don't really know. There's no real way to know because I'm not a dog and can't talk to them. But the dog, at least in some ability, connects with the owner in some capacity. Whether it's just, this nigga feeds me, the dog will protect the owner in some degree. As far as I know, pigs and cows and chickens are not like that. Their relation to humans is not an obligation to where I will protect them and keep them safe if they're close to them. I could be wrong about pigs because I've been told that pigs are sometimes even more intelligent than dogs, but I've never really seen a case where a pig has become protective of a human. I could be wrong here. And I would even argue that if pigs, for the most part, provided the same services as a dog, people wouldn't need pigs. The reason why we feel that dogs are in a different category from the livestock animals is because dogs have some kind of service or some kind of reciprocation to the degree of which humans put into them. A dog protects the human because the human feeds the dog. We get something back from the dog, and the dog can have other different services too, being seeing-eye dog, sniff out drugs, and all that other jazz. Again, the livestock animals don't. And considering the fact that animals aren't moral agents, considering they can't even conceptualize the idea, nor can they reciprocate the idea of morality to humans, humans don't have the same obligation they have to livestock as they do to dogs. In fact, I would argue that no animal has any obligation to another animal because they can't even conceptualize the idea. So, the whole reason why humans even have a moral obligation to other humans is because we not only can conceptualize the idea, but we can reciprocate it. And the fact that I find it very interesting that this kind of gets glossed over, and that is humans can forfeit their protections and their rights, at least in America, whenever they break the law, whenever they break that morality between other humans. If one human kills another person, then they have not reciprocated the same moral responsibility they're supposed to have. And they forfeit their life in some cases. They, through the death penalty. If someone steals something, they forfeit their freedom by going to jail. We treat other humans like this whenever they do not reciprocate moral responsibility. Considering that animals don't have any moral responsibility at all to either be accepted or reciprocated, I can't find it reasonable to give this sort of moral agency to a creature that, again, cannot even conceptualize the idea, nor can even reciprocate it. Now, all of that being said, that doesn't really mean that being a vegan is wrong. It also doesn't mean that eating meat is right. However, what it does mean is trying to give moral agency to animals and try to put animals in the same categories of humans is silly. And it's not a double standard to say that humans and livestock animals are different, because, well, we are. One of the most important aspects of Ask Yourself's arguments, where he completely says again, is, well, this.
Want to be treated morally, then what is the distinction between you and this fucking animal, which, if true of you, would justify treating you like this? There is not one, okay? Oh, the animal has spots. If you had spots, would it be okay to stab you to death? Oh, the animal's less intelligent, okay? If you were less intelligent, is it okay to stab you to death? Oh, the animal doesn't have a future concept. Oh, yeah? So if you didn't have a future concept, it would be okay to stab you to death? Oh, the animal's not a human. Oh, okay, so if an alien wanted to stab you to death because you're not an alien, would you be okay with that? Yeah, fuck no, okay?
Well, the simple reply to that is the condition does not exist. One, no creature would ever argue for its own self-destruction. So it's a really great catch-22 to catch someone in an argument, because they won't have an answer for you. Because, and this is point 2, there is no answer. The difference between humans and livestock is the difference between humans and livestock. And I know I just repeated myself, but a cow is not a human. Most species do not try to kill each other. And even when animals are cannibalistic, they're usually only cannibalistic to a I wouldn't even say lesser, but certainly different. Like, if a snake eats another snake, it's not normally the same species of snake. It's usually a smaller snake. However, most animals do not kill members of their own species unless they have to. And even when they do kill them, it's usually in order to either, one, protect themselves so they keep living, or protect their children. Most animals of specific species do not try to kill each other. So it would never make any sense for a human to argue for their own death. And no creature would ever argue for its own death either. So that's why no one would ever argue that it's okay to kill a human if you put them in the same situation as you would any livestock animal. That said, I also don't feel that humans have any moral obligation to animals, because animals don't have a moral obligation to humans. And the reason why humans have a moral obligation to each other is because we can understand and reciprocate them. And whenever a human does not reciprocate that moral responsibility, well, we punish them, which means that we all, in some degree, understand moral reciprocation and moral responsibility is contingent upon the fact that I do to you what I want you to do to me, or in some area like that. So yeah, like I said, this doesn't mean that veganism is wrong, and I'm not even saying that you shouldn't try being vegan. I honestly think that if you think being a vegan is a healthier option, you should try it. However, I do not think that it's fair or reasonable to say that meat eaters are wrong if you would never say that an animal eating another animal is wrong, especially considering if you accept that humans are animals. You would have to say that humans have to exist in some area that transcends animals, which would be our own morality and rationality. But even then, considering that morality is based off of our reciprocation to each other and animals can't reciprocate it, I don't see how you could logically then extend it to animals when they can't extend it back. If you want to say that as a courtesy, humans should treat animals better or well, no, I'd say, yeah, sure, that's interesting. I think as a courtesy, that's a good argument. But as a responsibility, I would say, no, that's silly. You would never say that about any other animal, so you can't really say that about humans either. And again, animals or livestock can't reciprocate that to humans, so it doesn't make sense for humans to extend it to them. And that's how I feel about that. So again, in conclusion, does this mean that veganism is wrong? Not based on what I said. However, I don't think the arguments for eating meat is wrong based on what vegans said. So come to your own conclusions as you will. I think you should try out veganism if you think it's healthier. And I do find it very interesting when some people say that they've gotten sick or have gotten weaker from being vegans. That's something I'll have to look into more myself. I think that's something everyone else should look into as well. However, well, that's the end of this video. So with that being said, man, I certainly hope you guys enjoyed today's video. And if you did, man, go ahead and click the like button. And then shoot, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Comment in the comment box below. And as always, you guys have yourselves a great day. And I'll see you cool cats soon. Adios.